everybody. So today we're going to do another last seen chart, event chart. I actually have done a blog post on this particular case before, over a year ago. Oh, that was before I ever started filming videos. And honestly, I was never sure if I was ever going to really start filming last seen videos or anything like that. But people seem to be interested in this, so I figured I would. And because this case actually does, it's always really struck a chord with me. All missing person cases are sad, but this one has always really struck a chord with me. Maybe it's because she is a native Austinite, and that's where I am. Maybe it's because we are the same age. We would have, if we had gone to the same high school, we would have been in high school together, in the same class, graduating class. So maybe those are why this particular case strikes such a chord with me. This is, I'm talking about Roxanne Paltauf. She went missing on July 7th of 2006. Last time she was seen was 8:30 p.m. here in Austin. She was at, and I remember this area. I don't really know what it's like now, but I do remember the area when I was growing up. It was off of I-35 in Rumberg. This was not the greatest area. It was lots of drugs, lots of prostitution, shit like that going on at the hotels that were over there, in that area. I'm sure there are people that lived over there in 2006 and before that were not involved in any of that shit. So I'm not trying to paint it with a broad brush, but anybody that lived here at that time or before, I don't really know what it's like now. I haven't been down there in a long time, but you'll know what I'm talking about. Obviously not everybody that lived over there was involved in that stuff, or around there, but y'all know what I mean. Y'all know what I mean. So the lesson, and there are weird things about this case. I'll link the actual blog post to the description box. Either if you're watching this on Instagram, it'll be there. If you're watching on YouTube, because it'll go into much more detail than I can go into in this 15-minute video. But this case is weird. You know, she and her boyfriend, I'm not going to use their names in the blog post. I don't use their names. Their names, his name, her boyfriend's name, it is public record. The other guy who I think is actually responsible for this, it's also public record, but for legal reasons, I'm not going to say their names. And I'm not, and they're not in the blog post either, but you are more than free to look this case up and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But you'll know the names aren't a secret. I'm just not going to use them here. So she and her boyfriend were, my understanding, she and her boyfriend were staying at this hotel, over 4th of July weekend. What exactly they were doing there, I don't know. I mean, I've got some ideas. But that doesn't seem to be really known, but they were there, staying there or doing something. And then on the 7th of July, she leaves. This is what he says. He says she leaves. I can't remember if they got into a fight or not, but she leaves. She leaves all of her stuff, though. She didn't take her purse. She didn't take her phone. She didn't take any of her shit. It stayed at the hotel. And that was the last time anybody saw her. I think also somebody else saw her around the same time walking from the hotel. I might be wrong about that, but I think there was another person that saw her around the same time. That was the last time she was seen, 8:30 p.m. Okay, so that's the time that I went with here for this case on July 7th of 2006. This is what the chart looks like. So the victim or missing person is the ascendant. You would look at the ascendant and the chart ruler. So we've got Capricorn ascendant and we've got Saturn in the 7th house, excuse me. And then we have the descendant in Cancer. with the moon in the, so I don't say it wrong again, in the 11th house. And the moon is always the co-ruler of these charts. So this chart is ruled by Saturn in Leo and in the moon in Sagittarius in the 11th. Now, in the blog post, I go into more detail about, because there is like, you want to look, when you look at these charts, you want to look at like the chain of dispositions. That's kind of how I look at it. The chain of dispositions, you know, like from, and then I look at like where they stop. So she starts here, right? She starts here at Saturn and Leo. Then Leo is ruled by the sun, so then you go to the sun. The sun is in Cancer, so then you go to the moon. Moon is in Sagittarius, and then you go to Jupiter. Jupiter is in Scorpio, so then you'd go to Pluto. In this case, you could also go to Mars, but in this case, I went to Pluto. I felt more called to go to Pluto, and there is a mutual reception between Pluto and Jupiter. So that's where that chain stops, right? So that's where her chain stops. Then from here you would go, okay, then you'd want to do the chain for the descendant. So you've got the moon in Sagittarius. That then goes to, that would then go to Jupiter and Scorpio, and then Pluto in Sagittarius, and then back to Jupiter and Scorpio. Now, what that tells me, since the moon like is in both of these, the moon in Sagittarius in the 11th house is where she met up with somebody. The other guy specifically, I think the other guy, not her boyfriend, I think her boyfriend's a piece of shit. Her boyfriend was a piece of shit, and I think actually had a lot to do with this. But I don't think her boyfriend was actually the one that killed her. I do think she's dead. I do think, I hate to say that, I do think she's dead. I do think, I mean, it's been, 15 years now. I mean, more than likely, she is, she's not alive anymore, but I do think she's dead. She was in a lot of danger. You've got the ruler of the 8th house, the sun, because Leo's on the cusp of the 8th. You have it conjunct, you have the sun conjunct the descendant, which gives the perpetrator a lot of power. It gives them a lot of power here. I think he was probably much more dangerous than she thought he was. I also don't think that it's random. Supposedly they kind of made it seem like she randomly got in the car with him. I don't really think this is random, and I'll say this too. I'll quit beating. I do think that there was some prostitution going on. I know that's not anything the family wants to hear. I'm sorry. I think there probably was. I don't think this was all the time. I don't think it was an all the time thing. But I do think that maybe when they needed money for whatever they needed money for, I think her boyfriend would turn her out. I just do. I think that's probably what was going on. But I don't think, I don't think that she was a prostitute though, all the time. I think this was more like something that they just did, or that she just did, or allowed to happen when they needed spare money for whatever. That's the feeling that I get from the chart. And also from just things about the case and some of the weirdness around the case. And her leaving her belongings almost seems like collateral, like leaving collateral behind. Like, okay, you go do this, and then you can come back and get your shit. Bring me some of the money, and then you can come. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the belongings left behind were some kind of collateral. Anyway, I do think she got in the car with this other guy. I think it was probably set up for her to get in the car with this other guy. I don't think it was random. I think he picked her up because he was supposed to. I think the boyfriend knew this. I don't think the boyfriend knew that this other guy was going to hurt her, but I do think he did. I definitely think it's the other guy. Another weird thing about, okay, this is a Mercury retrograde chart. That can already make things like issues with information, right? Kind of feel like you're backtracking or whatever. Mercury retrograde, though, happens to be in the 7th house, which means that this is going to be something that has to do not only what I just mentioned, but it's also going to be something that has to do with him, with the perpetrator. The other guy is legally deaf or hearing impaired. Yeah. To me, that is because Mercury retrograde can impact communication, as can being deaf or legally hearing impaired. I'm not exactly sure which one it is with him, but it's one of the two. That feels very Mercury retrograde to me. It just does. And since the 7th house can deal with, the planets in the 7th house can deal with things about the perpetrator, I think that's actually who did this. I think people have harped too long and too much on this boyfriend. Now, don't get me wrong. This boyfriend is a piece of shit. He is a piece of shit. And I wouldn't be surprised if he knows more than he's saying, but he's not the one that actually killed her. I don't think he is. I don't think he is. I think it was the other guy, who's also a piece of shit. They're both pieces of shit. Now, do check out the blog post because this is getting kind of long. There is a way to map these charts. Now, I'll be honest, the mapping of it, I have reached out to some people that do this, and I never got an answer. Never got a response. I offered to pay. Never got a response to learn how to do this exactly, because I'd love to have somebody actually teach me how to do this. Teach me, without me just kind of going off of videos that I've watched and kind of guessing that that's how it's done. But when you can map these charts to try to find people. And really, I understand all of the other mapping. What I have an issue with is setting the radius, because it seems like different things have been used to set the radius in the past in videos that I watched. Like, the ascendant does seem to be what's used more often than not, but I've also seen other things used. So sometimes I'd be curious to know exactly how to nail down what to choose to set the damn radius. But either way, beyond that, I do understand how to map it beyond that. It's just that particular part. But anyway, so this is kind of the map that I came up with. I don't know if you can really see it here. The blue marker is where the budget in is, where she was last seen. And these lines correspond with different places in the chart, different planets in the chart, or different degrees in the chart that you then map out on a map. Now, I go into a lot more than this, and I'm about to run out of time. So I'll just say really quickly, they need to be looking here. This is where they need to be looking. Decker, tall grass, prairie, preserve. This is where they need to be looking. Specifically right in here. And they may not find her body there, because there is also some other retrograde in the chart, which makes me think she could have been moved, like put somewhere and then moved later. But I think they might find something that correlates to this area. If they were to go and really search this area, I think they would find something there that, if not her, they would find something of hers or that alludes to her being there. Let me say this area, you have to actually like get an appointment or take a tour of it. Otherwise, I would have already checked this shit out myself. To be honest, I would have already gone on a little stroll through there myself, because it's not that far from where I live, not super far. But this is where they need to be looking. I really believe that. There's some other places too that I mentioned in the blog post, but this is where they need to look. If they have not looked there, they need to look. If anybody knows what this area was like in 2006, because I can't figure that out exactly, let me know. Because I would be curious to know what this area looked like in July, in 2006 through, like 2007, 2008. Anyway, I'm going to get going. Check out the blog post, though. It does go into more detail. And I will see you all later.